Hey, what's up guys and gals and Mythic community? It is the Tyrant here, and welcome to the world premiere of my Halo 5 Guardians Mythic Difficulty walkthrough. Mythic Difficulty, of course, is legendary, all skulls on, no saves, no deaths, and scoring enabled when applicable, which it is in Halo 5 Guardians. This is the very first mission, Osiris. And as we go through here, I'm going to explain some of the changes that have occurred in Halo 5 compared to previous Halo games. Basically, we have a new feature here called Revival. This is a product of the squad system that was implemented into Halo 5. And as a result, this was put in there because the game treats you like you have 3 other Spartans on your side. That's why you see so many enemies. They can shoot from much further range, and you see more homing weapons from those enemies. When you have scoring enabled, it does tell you that revivals do not count as deaths. Revivals were added in or patched in with the Iron Skull following the major update in 2016. Prior to that, Iron Skull meant that you could not be revived or revive anybody else. Now, as you can see right here, some people would try to speed run this thing. Don't do it. Just hop on this rock that's just to the left of the beaten path and take out the grunts. Right here, they'll be fighting crawlers. Of course, there's a couple of jackals here too. They should be jackal majors per the thunderstorm skull, which of course raises rank. One of the things that you do need to keep in mind for those of you who want to be gutsy and try to speedrun this thing, another way that this game differs from previous Halo games is the fact that the Mythic Skull, while it does double enemy health like it usually does, it does not seem to do the same for the player this time around. Typically in the past, the Mythic Skull would also benefit you in addition to the enemy. This time around, it does not. I tried doing this with the Blind Skull off the first time, and essentially when my shields were down, which of course they can't get back up unless you melee an enemy, per the Black Eye Skull, basically one light rifle shot anywhere to your body will lower your health to a critical level, and one more light rifle shot after that will finish you off. So 2 light rifle shots and you're done, which should not be the case typically, but it is this time, which is another reason why revivals are something that's fine. And when I originally heard of this concept, back when the game first came out, and one of my Mythic community members, Legendary Smile, was doing this, I actually reached out to 343 to let them know that in reality, because of the way the game is, revivals should be an option. Of course, it should be noted that in this game, once you're revived, you're still not going to have any shields per the effects of the Black Eye Skull, so it's not a redo or anything like that. You're still extremely vulnerable, and of course, if you do something stupid in battle, your allies aren't going to be able to help you anyway. So, again, revivals are fine in this game. For anyone who's able to complete the game without revivals, more power to you, but I've seen this done by our Legendary Smile guy, and he spends half the time, this isn't a critical comment by the way, he spends half the time escaping the map and the other time just grinding through it, killing everything one at a time. And of course, you've seen the number of enemies here, so yeah, that's not fun. That's Halo 2 level difficult. So as you can see, we're going ahead and just plowing through these guys. The general rule I have with soldiers, what you need to understand is the catch skull affects them. So they will be chucking grenades with deadly precision at you this entire time. Now, the way you can get around this is to close the gap. You have basically 2 options when it comes to soldiers. One, you can shoot at them from extreme distances. Keep in mind, you really do have to keep your distance because they can also shoot from pretty far away, even when it comes to something as simple as the suppressor. So this is one option. Your second option, if the soldier is not really met with a lot of allies or doesn't have a lot of allies with him, you can close the gap and just melee him. The nice thing about the Black Eye Skull in any scenario is you can control when your shields go up rather than having to rely on a timer. This is one of the reasons why the Flood aren't that bad to fight in Halo 3. You know, a lot of people used to say that Cortana was a really tough mission on Mythic, and I'm like, no, it was actually like the 3rd easiest one because you had so many floods you can melee. And so you could constantly keep your shields up. The same principle can be used with the Prometheans, but you do need to be careful because there are so many of them. And of course, as you can see with the soldier right there, he can also warp around and teleport. The other thing you have to worry about with Prometheans is, of course, as soon as you take a few steps, you'll see a bunch of flashes of light just like that, and a bunch of soldiers and crawlers and sometimes knights and watchers will just pour out of nowhere. And so the game's odds are stacked pretty far against you. My recommendation for this type of entry is whenever you see those flashes of light, one of the nice things about this particular mission is you can always backtrack. And that's something that I highly recommend that you do. That way you can sit back and pick them off one at a time. Now, in terms of your allies here, what you don't have to worry about is them not being able to revive each other. The skulls don't seem to have the same effect on them. The black eye skull definitely doesn't affect your allies. Their shields can recharge, at least in terms of as long as they're AI. If you're trying to do this on co-op, then your co-op buddies are going to end up facing the same issues that you are. The Mythic Skull might actually have an impact on them because I've seen grenades getting chucked at them before, and of course once Cowbell gets kicked in, they get thrown into the air, but I haven't seen shields pop. So I think it does affect them, but not really you. Now, against the Promethean soldiers, the most effective weapon that you can use by far is the light rifle. It's very powerful. It's extremely effective when it comes to headshots. The battle rifle is not too bad either, and of course the DMR. In certain scenarios, but really the light rifle is the way to go. And as you can see right there, the grenades that they chuck are pretty damn deadly. They're pretty dangerous. They have a lot of splash damage to them, and like I said, they throw them quite accurately at the same time. This is another reason why revivals are going to make this game a little bit better, and it also allows you to be a bit more creative with your options in terms of downing the enemies. You don't have to be quite as afraid as you normally would, so it's a nice touch to have this here. Just another reason why I like the implementation of the squad system in Halo 5. Now, generally speaking, a good secondary weapon to have in these scenarios, wow, that was random, is a bolt shot. They are a little bit more effective than the suppressor. So just keep that in mind. Now, of course, with the blind skull activated, as you can see after I was down right there, you don't have a timer anymore to associate with in terms of how much time you have left until your revival chances run out. So if you're too far away from your allies, you're not going to get that chance. Not that it would matter anyway, because you won't know how much time you had left. Timing really, knowing how much time you have really doesn't matter. It's how fast your allies can get to you, which is why you don't want to get too far away from them. And I literally walked right into that one. The grenades from the pulse grenades or whatever they're called here, I think I forget what they're called exactly, but they're pretty powerful, a lot of splash damage, and they last for a while too. Those little sparks they give off will continuously deal damage. They're a lot more effective than the Forerunner grenades that we saw in Halo 4. There's plenty of light rifle ammo in this area, but you still need to be a little careful with it because if you're too reckless, you will run out. And again, this is going to be your best weapon against the soldiers. There's quite a few of them in this mission. This is primarily a Promethean mission. You'll see Covenant here and there, but for the most part, you'll be dealing with Prometheans. Hopefully, after this mission, you'll be fairly seasoned with them. Of course, you'll be dealing with Knights towards the end of the mission, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So again, my advice here, especially when you're dealing with Prometheans with very short-range weapons as opposed to light rifles, your best bet's just to hang back and try to headshot them. The light rifle is very effective here. Unfortunately, unlike with the Covenant, you can't really do combo weapons that well. The bolt shot can be effective, but that's really only good for close range. And if you're going for close range anyway and trying to close the gap, you might as well just go in for melee attacks so you can make sure your shields get back up. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Black Eye Skull, your shields will not recharge until you melee an enemy. This can be particularly cumbersome in long-range battle scenarios. So here we're just going to go ahead and take the clip up here. Like I said, as soon as you see those flashes, run back, because if you don't, you're going to be overwhelmed very quickly. If you are caught in the crossfire, your teammates will not be able to revive you because they'll be downed at the same time. There won't be much they can do to help you. Like I said, the revival's a nice touch. It gives you an extra ounce of support, but in no way is it a guarantee that you're going to stay alive throughout the mission, especially given the fact that you do not regain shields upon getting revived. Revival here, when a player goes down, it's usually just thought of as armor lock instead of a death. It's a nice little feature to add. Basically why I'm glad they did this is because in Halo 4, oftentimes I would get randomly killed by something, and because we didn't have theater mode back then, and we still don't now for campaign, I was unable to find out why. In fact, I made an entire series based off of it called Halo 4 WTF Moments. So I think they took a little inspiration from that series and added that as an option here so you wouldn't get any cheap deaths. It's a nice little feature to add. It makes the game a little bit easier, true, but it makes it a bit more fair and balanced, and I can get beside that. So again, my recommendation here, just edge along slowly. You can't really speed run these sections very efficiently, not on Mythic anyway. So just sort of edge along, take the enemies out as you go. Make sure you have plenty of cover near you so that if you do start taking hits, you can easily get behind something. The main thing that you're really going to want to look at here more than anything else, as we've already talked about, are the grenades, because they throw them consistently and they are significantly powerful, especially if you do not have shields. And on Mythic Difficulty, you need to assume at all times that you do not have shields. You're not going to have an indicator to tell you differently. So just keep that in mind as well. In terms of reviving your allies, you can do that, but with the Blind Skull activated, you're never going to know where they are. So when your allies go down, that's pretty much going to be it unless one of your other allies can get to them or if you just happen to see them fall. But since there's no indicators as to where they are, the only way you're going to know where your allies are is if you can keep them consistently close to you. So just keep that in mind. Of course, when it comes to you, they can see exactly where you are. So if they manage to take you down, then you should be in good shape. Now, a tip with the Promethean soldiers here, when you hit them with the light rifle, as soon as their face plate breaks, you'll see a nice orange glow. That means you can one-shot them in the face right there. It's a good tip to have. I'm going to go ahead and just deal with this guy. Typically, if there's only 1 or 2 soldiers left, it's not that bad to go ahead and just get into a melee battle. Just be careful. But if there's too many enemies around, then you're going to get taken out pretty easily. Also, the crawlers are a good way to regain shields as well. It's very important to know how to take down Prometheans in this game because they make up most of the game. As a matter of fact, out of the 15 missions, only 2 of them are Covenant-only missions. The rest are either all Promethean or they are heavily Promethean. So just a little something to keep in mind there. So this next section right here, again, you're going to have a couple of waves that spawn in. It's mostly crawlers. It's only crawlers and soldiers. You're going to have soldiers that are going to be guarding the door. My suggestion to you is that you take all of the soldiers out by way of distance, and you save the last one for a melee fight. That way you can recharge your shields before you head into the next area. It is important to keep this in mind. Now, of course, as you know, with your allies here, you can select enemies and help them engage, and basically you get a little extra firepower added to those enemies. It'll help you down them just a little bit quicker. It is important to keep that in mind, especially since it's so easy at times just to forget that they're there, and then you're wasting all of your ammo just trying to take down 1 or 2 soldiers. So if you're actively engaged in a battle and you want to get your guys involved, definitely paint your enemy target so that you have 4 different guns coming at them. Now, in terms of your allies going down, they will eventually respawn after a certain amount of time or once you cross a certain threshold in the mission. So just because they go down doesn't mean they won't be coming back. So that's something to keep in mind too. So if you're in a tight spot and all your allies are dead, if you're willing to wait long enough, eventually they'll come back into the game. So again, we're just taking this nice and slow here. We've got a few soldiers up there. It's very easy for them to gang up on you. Always use headshots. Always, if you see any downed light rifles or you see a crate of them, use it sparingly, but make sure you keep an eye on those locations. Keep in mind with the Famine Skull active, the ammo that you pick up from downed enemy weapons will be half as much as it usually is. So again, we're just taking our time here, making sure we don't get ganged up on. It's very easy to get taken off guard. And of course, like I said, always assume that your shields are down because when it comes to Promethean soldiers, it only takes 2 light rifle rounds once your shields are down to take you down as well. And if you don't have any allies around, it's not going to help you. Now, keep in mind, revival does not always work. If an enemy hits you directly with a grenade, then you're pretty much toast. The same goes for heavy weapons like rocket launchers or fuel rod guns or incineration cannons. And also that also applies to binary rifles as well. So the revival feature is not a guarantee by any means at all. The Blind Skull does make this a bit more difficult. Once you get used to it, it's not that bad. The radar being gone is not that big of a deal anyway because of the fog/cloud skull, so that's already a given, and you don't really desperately need it. The main thing is ammo count and which weapon you're actually holding. That can be kind of jarring since it's hard to tell how many shots you have left. People wonder often why I picked up the habit of constantly reloading, and Mythic Difficulty is it, because you never know how many rounds you have left. And so that can be a critical position, because if you manage to down an enemy's shields, and it would only take one shot to finish them off, but boom, you have to reload, that gives them plenty of time to either retaliate or duck back into cover. So that's never a fun option. So again, reload every chance you can get. You're not wasting ammo by doing it. I'm not really sure why people come up with that concept, because it's just not true. Whoops, and I completely missed that guy there. But see how easy it was? Even though he knew I was there and I missed the first melee attack, it didn't really make a huge difference because I was able to finish him off anyway. That's the power of being able to control when your shields recharge. It's actually quite nice. One of the other features that's been added to this game, of course, is the jetpack, or the thruster pack, I should say. There's several different features that come with that. The one that you just saw me use is the Spartan Charge. That can be used to break through soft barriers, as well as use a super melee attack against your enemies. This can be a very effective tool, especially when you're dealing with Mythic Difficulty and the Black Eye Skull, so use it as much as you can. It certainly helps you out. In terms of the ground pound, I really wouldn't recommend it in most cases, because you can't see the target area anymore with the blind skull active, so you could be jumping to a place that you don't intend to jump. So although I think basically speaking the target location is generally where the reticle is supposed to be, so you could always go based off of that if you have a great eagle eye. That's all I'm saying. I only have one eye, or one legal, or because I'm legally blind in one eye, so I may not be going that route except maybe once on the mission blue team. And that's basically it. And that's when you use the ground pound option to go from the elevator all the way down to the platforms below. So you've got Covenant fighting Prometheans here. Generally speaking, the Covenant aren't going to pay much attention to you unless you draw a lot of attention to yourself. The Elite's going to be your main concern here, but most of the time he's going to have his attention drawn towards the Prometheans. So as you can see, it was pretty easy to take him out right there. Fortunately, there's only a Jackal around. I'm a little bit worried about the Promethean soldier. Fortunately, the Jackal seemed to be the soldier's prime target, so that's always good. This area can take you quite a while because there's a lot of Prometheans here, but you have a lot of backtracking capability as well. So as long as you're just taking it slow and taking on the enemies as you approach them, it's not that big of a problem. You do need to keep an eye out for the Kraken, though, that's right there in front of us, because it does occasionally shoot down at the ground. It seems to be random what they hit, so it doesn't seem to really be targeting you specifically, but just keep an eye out for it because it can deal damage to you. So just move up slowly. There's plenty of cover here. You're going to have several waves of Prometheans that spawn as you approach the final structure. So again, as soon as you see those light pulses, backtrack immediately. It's not a bad idea to skip ahead just a little bit so you can try to spawn in more waves. That way you're not unpleasantly surprised, so you can easily backtrack. There's a lot of side paths that you can take in Halo 5, particularly this mission right here. So there's a lot of safe places that you can go, and places that you can go to give you sort of a better field of view. So just keep that in mind, but be very careful at the same time. Make sure you're bringing your allies with you, just to make sure that in the event that you do go down, you have someone there that can revive you. You definitely don't want your allies charging into battle either, because again, you lose crucial allies that could help you in a dire situation. So again, yep, I saw that coming. I was kind of hoping it would go over me. So I'm going to get my allies to help me out here. Again, I don't like the fact that we have to revive so much in this game just to be able to get through it at a reasonable pace. Like I said, it's entirely possible if you are ultra dedicated and very patient, you can get through this without having to worry about it. Obviously, for the sake of classic Mythic, I'm going to try to get through at least some of these missions without needing a revive, and I'm pretty sure at least some of them are fairly doable, but it just depends on the setting. But fortunately, like I said, the option of revival at the very least allows you to spice things up a little bit, take a few more chances than usual, and definitely make gameplay a bit more entertaining. And it also makes it a bit more accessible to people who otherwise might not try out Mythic Difficulty. So it's a fun new way to spice things up. That's all I'm saying. But again, keep an eye out for ammo depots here. Unlike weapons that are dropped from enemies, you don't have to worry about those having a 50% reduction in terms of the ammo that they have. So definitely keep an eye on those. And in terms of these guys over here, remember, soldiers do have a tendency to warp away. They're a bit inconvenient because they can not only warp away, but if they see an open shot with you, they can warp right next to you and cause some serious damage. I'm not really sure why they're able to do what they do. They make them a pretty frustrating and almost borderline cheating enemy. But it's still nice to have a mid-range enemy between the crawlers and the knights. So again, just sort of take your time here. We've got several soldiers over here. Fortunately, we're far enough away that we shouldn't see too many issues with grenades. You might see your occasional grenade, especially if one decides to get brave and advance forward. But for the most part, you're sort of at the downhill slope here. You just need to hang back and shoot them when you see them. Target one at a time. Keep in mind, at the end of this little section right here, you have several Promethean soldiers guarding the door. And on the upper levels, you have Promethean soldiers wielding Splinter Turrets. And you want to make those the top priority because, again, when your shields are down, if one of those hits you, you're down and out. So don't take your chances there. Like I said, those grenades are pretty effective. And the fact that soldiers can just teleport near you randomly and start chucking grenades is fairly imbalanced in and of itself. Fortunately, this helps a little bit, but as you can see, it's very difficult to get out of some of these situations. Even putting distance between you and the Promethean soldiers can be a problem if they keep warping towards you. And they have a habit of doing that in this game. The first person in the world to be able to do this without reviving at all is Legendary Smile. And it doesn't surprise me that it's him because he's also one of only 2 people in the entire world to beat Halo 2 on Mythic. That's right, Mythic wasn't even supposed to be a part of Halo 2, but he created the 14 profiles necessary to actually get all the skulls and go through each and every mission single segment with all those skulls activated on Legendary without dying. That's a pretty tough thing to do. Even I won't attempt that one. Halo 5 without revival is almost, I would say, since I've tried it by doing that and I've attempted Halo 2 Mythic just for fun before, I'm going to say, even though Halo 2 is still technically more difficult, Halo 5 is right next to it in that regard. And if Legendary Smile is listening, I'm sure he can probably speak more towards that in the comments below. The other gentleman to do it was another guy from my Mythic community, Michael W. Smith. Excellent guy. He's been around for a long time. He's the other person who managed to conquer Halo 2 on Mythic and also Halo 5 Guardians Mythic without revival. So that's extremely impressive. I do want to say that I'm sure those guys have mixed reactions to the Iron Skull being tweaked, but from Legendary Smile's own terminology, he agrees that it's probably a good thing simply because it makes it a bit more accessible and a bit more fair to people all around. It's a bit more appropriate just considering what type of game Halo 5 Guardians is versus some of the previous games out there. So we're getting close to it here. Like I said, one of the best things you can do is if you can get a soldier alone, just engage in melee combat. It's fairly simple, and your Spartan Charge is a great way to just make sure you keep some distance from you and can't really get but so many hits off of you. Crawlers are an option too. Just keep that in mind. But it's a great way to go up against soldiers because it definitely stops them from chucking grenades at you once you're at close range. So that's a good thing to keep in mind as well. If those grenades are really giving you a hard time, just run in there and do your stuff. We only have a few other enemies to wipe out here. This is around the time you want to start worrying about clearing out those enemies on the turrets. That way they're not boggling you down once you start getting closer to the door. And of course, on that ledge where that turret is, there's a binary rifle. We're going to pick that up before we go inside. That's definitely something to keep in mind. Do not use it until you enter the door. Just a fair FYI there. So we're getting closer here. This right where I am, the platform right there, is a nice little depot for light rifle ammo. So it's a great place to retreat to. Typically, you're not going to be under fire. But see, that's a great way to just sort of deal with soldiers right there. Sort of zigzag as you're approaching them so you can dodge the grenades. Remember, they do fire with deadly accuracy. So keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to get into melee combat. Really the only unit that you don't want to do this with, well, two units, I should say, in terms of Prometheans is the Watcher. Actually, the Watcher isn't so bad. The one unit you really don't want to do this with is the Promethean Knights. Those guys, unlike in Halo 4, do not go down in one hit to the back unless you've actually weakened them severely. Your best option is to shoot from the vents, but we'll talk about that more in just a couple of minutes when we actually get to the final location in this mission, and that's the Promethean Knight room. So we're almost down here. As soon as these guys are down and the only remaining soldiers are close to the door, you can take a couple out if you want to, but don't be afraid to go or head to the right and go up the cliff wall. That way you have a little bit of an aerial advantage. They will not come up there to attack you. And that allows your allies to help you flank them. Makes you less of a target and allows you easier access to just sort of jump down there and start a melee attack on them without much fear of retaliation right away. So we have almost all these guys right here. I'm sort of taking my time because there's, I think, 4 or 5 of them over here. And that's not even counting the ones on the turrets. So again, pick up as much light rifle ammo as you can. There is some more inside, but you want to save as much of that as possible simply because of the enemies you will be facing once you enter the structure itself. There we go. So we're almost done. We got a few more. All right, that might be it. Oh, there's 2 more. Okay. Now, the one close to the ground, I might try to lure out over here, just so I can get into a melee battle with him. You do want to be a little careful with that, just because, remember, your allies chuck grenades too. And so if you move into a melee battle with them and your allies start chucking grenades at you, that can be a problem. Like I said, crawlers are a good way to actually get your shields back too. You just want to make sure you're not caught in the middle of a bunch of them. Otherwise, that's not going to really do you any favors. Okay, so there's 1 crawler left, I believe, unless one of my allies took him out. There he is. Okay, so it looks like we're in pretty good shape. I'm going to go ahead and get to the top area right here so we can deal with the last couple of soldiers, and then we can enter the complex itself. Overall, things seem to be going pretty well so far. Again, revivals, don't worry about them. 343 has already said they don't count as deaths. And based on the way Halo 5 is, I wouldn't count them that way either. That's just me personally, though. So that looks like that might be the last soldier, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to go ahead and just run in there and help out our allies real quick. There he is. That way we can have full shields when we go face the Promethean Knights. Oh, you almost got me there. See what I mean about the grenades? Of course, I was going to try to hit that guy. See what? Good, we have 1 more left. So we had 3 total. So I just went up against... Whoa, okay. He went into the wall for a second there. Nice clipping, buddy. Okay, so I want to make sure I get the last hit. Make sure my allies aren't stupid enough to toss grenades in there when I'm actually trying to take this guy out. There we go. So we should have full shields at this point. I'm not sure if we have full light rifle ammo. Oh, for a second there, I thought one of my allies was throwing more grenades. And I was like, really? There's nothing there. So, again, look around. Make sure you've got as much light rifle ammo as you can get. The binary rifle is up here. We're going to use that against the Promethean Knights. So, where is it? There it is. Okay. So, you want to go in with a light rifle as your primary weapon. Binary as your secondary. Actually, let me switch that up. You should be going in with the binary rifle already armed. You're going to be using that against the first Promethean Knight. Okay, so we're just going around real quick, making sure that any light rifle ammo laying around is there. Like I said, there's more inside, but if there's one thing you don't want to do, it's run out. So one thing that you can do as well is go ahead and grab one of these Splinter Turrets just in case you do run out. They're not that effective on Mythic, at least not against Promethean Knights, but they have a little bit of a punch against soldiers, and they can definitely deal damage to crawlers as well. So it's just a little something extra to have in there. It doesn't hurt. It's basically an easy way for you to carry 3 weapons into the area, so take it where you can get it. So we're almost there. So basically you're fighting new Promethean Knights here. They're very different than the ones from Halo 4, and we'll talk about more of those in a second. There's going to be one Promethean Knight right outside the door here. He's going to be stuck in an animation. What you want to do is blast him with the binary rifle, at the very least in that vent area right there. That's one of his weak spots. It'll briefly expose his back and even face, and check that out. We got him right there. Pretty cool, pretty easy, pretty simple. So essentially, what you want to do here is those vents that they have on their shoulders or underneath their arms, those are their weak spots. Once you manage to take one of those out, they will briefly show their faces for about half a second, and that gives you an opportunity to land a one-shot kill as long as you get them in the face. So it's extremely effective. It's a nice way to down knights fairly easily, as opposed to Halo 4, when you really just couldn't do that. They were souped up bad guys. So it's a nice feature that they added here. They're still powerful. They're still very boss-like, or at least mini boss-like, but they're not even close to being as formidable as they were in Halo 4. So it's a nice balance that they have here. So you do have a few knights that you have to worry about in this area, but as you can see, especially with the binary rifle, they aren't that difficult to deal with even on Mythic Difficulty. When you don't have a binary rifle handy, the light rifle should work just fine, but you really do need a hair trigger response when it comes to being able to one-shot them once their face mask opens them temporarily. So just keep that in mind. Typically, Promethean Knights only wield scatter shots, and the higher ranking Promethean Knights wield incineration cannons. So, and of course, those who wield incineration cannons can use both the Splinter setting as well as the full supercharged setting, so keep an eye on those things. The Knights are down at this point, so it's just crawlers that we're dealing with now. I always recommend going for the Knights first, just to get the big baddies out of the way, so you don't really have much to worry about after that. The only exception to that rule is if the crawlers get overly aggressive. So that's it. That is the very first mission on Mythic Difficulty. So have you tried this yet? And what is the biggest, or what is the skull that you fear the most in this game or in this particular mission? You can let me know in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter at MythicTyrant. A link to my Twitter feed can be found in the description below. And if you like this video and you want to contribute to the site and become a premium member for as little as $1 a month, and you want access to exclusive contests and rewards on our community Discord, check out my Patreon site. Support our site. It'll help us stay afloat through 2018, and it'll be good to have you here. And of course, if you don't want to donate once a month, we have a new Mythic Tyrant store as well, where we sell custom USB drives, t-shirts, hats, wireless keyboards, you name it, it has it. Dozens of things to choose from. The holidays are coming up, I'm just saying. And if you like this video and you want to see more, and you want to stay up to date on all your Halo news, tips, tricks, and secrets, don't forget to click that subscribe button for more content, more great content every single day right here on MythicTyrant.com. And also don't forget to hit that notification icon so you know as soon as that video goes up, and you can be one of the first to comment. It's good to be back, folks. It's been 4.5 years since the last time I did a Mythic walkthrough, and I'm glad to have finally returned. I'll catch you all right back here next time. Thanks again for watching, guys and gals. And as always, I'm the Tyrant, signing off.